receiver, and that cost has to be amortized across a relatively small number of units. So it's not like Bill Gates starts up a computer company and sells gazillions of copies of the software and writes off all his engineering costs over a very large number of units. And so there is a problem with the price points in our industry, getting things to fit in there. But I'll tell you where my real beef is in that line. Having said that, I've always had in my car a Philips DC 777, a wonderful product that has not only a good AM/FM tuner in it, but also a pretty decent shortwave section in it. In fact, a very good shortwave section, the best one I've ever had in terms of audio detection and
that's about 10,
how it sounds.
That's about 10 years old or so, isn't it?
Yes, and they don't make them anymore, and so I am guarding very jealously the one that I have, and I'm the only guy in Cleveland that listens to the BBC while I'm driving down the road, and or Africa number one. I'd like to roll down my windows in the summer and blast that out. That's fun. But the fact is, they had some grandiose plans for that radio, and they just never sold very much. They've never been able to get them into regular distribution channels. If you're going to buy a car radio, actually, most of the time they make you buy it at the dealer now. It's part of the dealer's profit, but I have been to there are other places, Circuit City and various stereo retail specialty places, and Philips never cracked that market at all. And so, therefore, they didn't sell very many receivers, and they finally just dumped them. And but there's I agree with you the remark you made there, Dave. There's absolutely no reason why you can't put a halfway decent shortwave section inside of a car radio, and there ought to be a substantial market there if somebody would just market it properly. But no, it's never been tried.
Yeah, and the other side of the thing, though, the other side of the coin there is that it's an extremely competitive field, and price is extremely important, dollar-wise. They want to get that cost down as low as possible, and so every dollar counts, and it might increase the cost of the radio maybe $5 or $10, but that could mean thousands of units or even more less sold.
Yes, that's true. On the other hand, I was recently at a stereo place. That's a hint about what might be coming in Passport, I guess. And they're selling plenty of things there that are priced way beyond my budget. People are paying $500-$600 to put those things that you hear driving down the road going ka-thump, 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 and they were all out there getting them put in their cars. So it seems to me there's a market for that if somebody would just tap it. But then I don't run a radio manufacturing business, and I'm not the president of Sony, so don't blame me.
Yeah. How long have you been with the, was it the Council of Economic Opportunities, or?
Yes, that's where I work, Dave. We're the War on Poverty in Cleveland. I'm one of the few people in the United States who works for such an institution who actually does research, and my full-time job is to figure out what makes people poor in Cleveland and see what we can do about it. And I came there in 1985, but I'm a sociologist. Before that, I was a college professor in sociology, and I was at Ashland for several years. I taught at Wittenberg and did my graduate work at Ohio State. So as far as regular work's concerned, I've always been working on social issues, which actually leads straightforward into DXing. I think a lot of us are interested in things like geography and history and political affairs, and that's one of the main things that draws people into the shortwave hobby in the first place, I think. So it was kind of a natural fit for me.
Yeah, and the different cultures and in the different countries and how people live, and some countries are not as well off as ours, and maybe some are a little bit better.
Yes, I used to go to Trinidad fairly regularly, and as part of my assignment for a club I was in, I was supposed to be the guy coordinating the special transmitter that was to be installed on Trinidad for the broadcast that we could all hear. And I guess that's still on my plate of things to do. I've been working on that for 20 years, and so far I've been unsuccessful. Sort of like the St. Helena's deal, where you take take the utility transmitter and actually run a broadcast on it. And I must say the Prime Minister and his assistants in Trinidad didn't see much point in getting Trinidad publicity like St. Helena was doing. So as a result, I guess I boycotted Trinidad for the last few years. I don't go there anymore. They need to have a station on the air.
There you go. You mentioned Radio St. Helena. Or that last year was supposedly the last broadcast of Radio St. Helena, or do you think it's going to come back this year?
It's my understanding, Dave, and I'm not an expert in this. I haven't been following it closely, other than just to listen to it on St. Helena's Day, like most of us. But I guess that transmitter they're using is in sad shape, and I'm not really 100% sure of the decision making, but. And maybe the novelty's wearing off. I don't know, although I don't think so, because that is another program where they've taken calls from listeners. Maybe some of us listening today have actually had their voice on the air from St. Helena's. I can't say I ever did, but when I do listen, I almost inevitably hear 3 or 4 people who I know broadcasting on there.
Did you get a QSL card from them?
Oh, yes, I heard them the very first year that they were on. In fact, that's an interesting story. I remember that very well. This was back in the days when they were still having the Monitoring Times conventions. In fact, it might have been the first Monitoring Times convention, if I recall. It was in Knoxville at a great big hotel, looked like a giant Quonset hut that was built for the Knoxville World's Fair. And that was the weekend that St. Helena Day was going to be on, and several of us were down there at the convention, and as you might imagine, the reception in a giant Quonset hut hotel wasn't very good, and so we were worried, how are we going to hear this thing, especially since everybody thought it might be very difficult DX. So we came prepared. Kevin Atkins, I believe it was, brought up an ICOM R70 from Alabama, and I don't remember whether he had the antenna as well, but we put up a humongous beverage outside next to a railroad tracks in Knoxville. I don't know how long that thing was, but it took us hours to erect it, and we did it properly, putting it up on the little stakes and everything, and we sort of figured which direction St. Helena was and pointed it straight at it. And there were several of us there. I remember Harold Cohns was there, Bob Brown was there, and who all else was with us? Glenn Hauser went out with us. It was one of the conventions that Glenn went to. And so we were all set up in the back of Kevin's van there with the R70 working, and at the appointed moment, in came St. Helena's blasting away, and we all patted each other on the back for our foresight. Boy, wasn't it a good thing that we put this beverage up. It's coming in real good. And that self-congratulation lasted about 10 minutes until we had a couple of small portables with us there, and I had one of them. I turned it on. It turned out I was getting it better on that little portable than we were getting it on that beverage.
Oh, what a story. That's funny. That's amazing. I'll tell you what happened to me last year was the last broadcast of St. Helena's. And I sent him email, okay, and anybody who sent him an email with a reception report would get a return QSL card via email. I don't know if that's officially recognized or not as counties, but you know, I'll take whatever I can get at this point in time. But anyway, what I did was in order to a lot of times if you're on the internet and you get email, you know you get a lot of spam and garbage and junk from people that you really don't want anything to do with, okay? Well, there was this one guy at a previous company I used to work for who would send me all kinds of large files, picture files and stuff, you know. And when I would connect to the internet, it would take like forever. When I load up my email program, it would take forever to download it. Well, there's a little selection option in your email program where it says do not accept and delete large emails, okay, attachments. Well, I was getting these things every other day, so I did that. I selected the do not accept and delete automatically large emails. Well, one day I connected, and guess what? There was a QSL card from Radio St. Helena, which must have went over the limit there. And then your email program comes up automatically, and it says you have selected delete. This picture has been deleted, and there was no way I could retrieve it. I tried to get it from my server, and it was the QSL card for Radio St. Helena.
Oh, that's not a good story, Dave. No. I didn't like the ending of that one.
It's a sad story, George. But so if anyone has a one of those QSL cards on the internet, I'd sure like to see it, because I don't know what it looks like. But it was a reception report and QSL card. It was just so big, and so that's a bad story. One of my unpleasant memories here on the internet. How long have you, George? How long have you been on the internet? And I wonder how the internet has changed your experiences in radio monitoring. And maybe you could take a minute or two and compare, the present day internet availability compared with like 15, 20, 30 years ago. When we had no internet, email, and all shortwave related stuff.
Oh boy, you opened up a whole case of words there. But I went kicking and screaming into the internet, which is kind of surprising because I've worked with computers ever since my early days in school, actually. But for some reason, I didn't see the potential of the internet at first, and I sort of didn't pay much attention to it. And then one day, I couldn't avoid it anymore. I went out and got a computer, and several people, John Cruzan, who runs the Free Radio Network website, I have to cite him in particular. He helped me quite a bit in getting set up and going through the debugging process if somebody doesn't know what they're doing. Since I plugged John, I might as well mention that. If you haven't seen the Free Radio Network website, that's a just truly outstanding pirate website. www.frn.net, I believe, is the URL for it. And he does a tremendous job with that thing. But anyway, I finally got working there, and since then a lot of water has gone under the dam. We've figured out a means by which we can integrate the internet with shortwave rather than having the two being separate domains. Look at this conversation we're having here right now. It's an example of that. I just mentioned in my ACE column yesterday, there's two truly outstanding clandestine websites up there. The Clandestine Radio Watch site that Martin Schock runs from Germany, and Nick Grace, who's from Washington, D.C., although he's in Indonesia right now, has the Clandestine Radio Intel site. That has won several internet awards, not shortwave awards, regular internet awards for being a good website. And last time I saw Nick, I believe it was the fest the year before last, he said that he had tried to check with, maybe he was using cookies or something, he was trying to figure out who was logging into that site for a while, and he was getting a sizable percentage, maybe 20% or so of his hits coming from foreign embassies, which is very interesting.
Wow.
And so there are a lot of good things out there. I mentioned Tom a little earlier since he's checked in. He's got, of course, an outstanding website, as you know, and there's just a large number of those that are out there now, and Ralph Durandy's doing a tremendous amount of good work for NASA and so forth. But interestingly enough, I almost never listen to the radio programming that's on the internet. I have tried it. I've got a real audio player here. When I do listen to something, I don't listen to the shortwave stations at all. I just don't find it interesting for some reason. I guess I did one time the VOA had me on and I listened to myself. I guess that's the only time I can remember doing it recently. But on the other hand, I do from time to time listen to the domestic stations in Switzerland. My ancestors come from Switzerland. In fact, I go over there once a year myself, and the domestic stations that are over there that play local